It's quite ironic on this beautiful day with the sky filled with clouds and so blue that we are talking about so many storms. In each and every one of our readings today, there is turmoil. Job is talking to God with turmoil. The psalm talks about sailors out in the sea who were very experienced, but yet they had this storm come across them, and all their experience did them no good. And of course, the gospel reading, which we're going to focus on today, is all about Jesus and his disciples in a storm. And then here we also hear a reading from Paul, talking about all the hardships and difficulties and things that they go through, yet they give us some ideas of how to get through these hardships. So today, I love it when there is a story in the Bible that is so exciting. You know, I always think they could make a movie out of this story. Here we have Jesus. He's just been in the land healing people. There's like a healing of a paralytic man. There's a healing of a man with a withered hand. There's all kinds of healings going on. You know, people want to be with him because he is doing wonderful things. Then there comes a time when he says to his disciples, "Let's go." They go out together with Jesus in their presence. They get into a boat big enough to hold all the disciples, and they go out onto a sea. I can only imagine that the sea that they originally were going out onto in this very large boat was fairly calm. And I don't know if many of you have been out on Lake Erie. Sometimes you might go out on Lake Erie to fish, and you go out and you're out there, and all of a sudden a storm comes up, and sometimes you don't even get back in time to park your boat and get in your car and go home. You get splashed with waves, and it's scary and it's windy out there. So that's what this kind of reminds me of. That here are a boat full of disciples and Jesus heading out across the Sea of Galilee. They're heading actually to the other side where they're going to minister to the Gentiles, which we'll be reading those Gospels probably in the next few weeks. But here they are in this boat, and Jesus actually, it says, is sleeping. So they have Jesus with them in the boat sleeping, and then this big storm comes up, and they are terrified, and the waters are swamping the boat, and they are, I'm assuming, wet. They could be paralyzed with fear. They don't know what to do, and they actually wake up Jesus and say, "Wake up! Do you know we are perishing?" I'm thinking they're thinking they might die. Who knows what's going to happen? When you are out in a boat, in a storm, it is a scary moment in your life. And you react in many ways. I'm sure everyone's different. And that's kind of what the sermon is about. How do we react in fear? And how do we react in faith? What are our actions like? Well, Jesus did wake up, and Jesus did help them. He stilled the storm. He made the waters calm. I envision those waters at that moment to be as calm as maybe a lake. Have you ever driven past a lake and there's a woods next to it, and right in the lake is a total reflection of the woods? It almost looks like a painting or a picture. I know this was probably nighttime and you couldn't see the reflection, but that is the calmness that I imagine. The sea was so calm. And if you're a water skier like I used to be when I was young, that's when you wanted to go water skiing on a very calm sea. So here they are with Jesus, who they just watched heal many people. And he had this storm go away. The rain stopped. This is like one of those theophanies. It's like where God came to Moses in the burning bush, where Isaiah saw God in a temple. Here they are seeing Jesus, God, making the storm stop. And they did not understand it. just like in our lives, things happen that we don't understand either. Things happen that are difficult that we don't understand. Things happen that are really good, like mountaintop experiences that we may have. Someone comes into our life or an event happens, and we say, that was God. Okay, so now how can we look at this gospel story kind of as an example, as a way that we might go about our lives as people of faith? How might we react to some fears that come over us? Because each and every one of us have fears. Now, yesterday's group did not get the story that I'm going to tell you right here for a moment. People who know me well know that I am fearful of insects. Spiders, ants, especially bumblebees, they make me act in ways that I really don't like people to see me react. And if you were driving with me in a car, my kids would tell you, don't be with her when a bumblebee comes in the car, because she's almost killed us a few times. Because a bee comes in my car and I just like, freak out. Well, we just had an insect experience in the back. Here is adorable Brooke, our acolyte. She lights the taper to come out and light these beautiful candles. We are all calm. We have just prayed. And do you know what happened when Brooke lit the taper? This monstrously large black spider flew out of it onto the table. I can tell you that that just like freaked me out. So just like those disciples freaked out in a storm, I freaked out of the insects. Actually, John and Brooke, they were pretty calm. I'm sure they have other fears that are bigger than bugs. So you probably think, wow, what is my biggest fear and how might I react to it? Well, one way of reacting to a fear is actually shrieking and going crazy. And that's what happens. These little birds up here, their address is 1051 Beef Drive in Oregon, Ohio. That is my home, and they for years live on our porch. We think they're martins, and they are known to just go crazy when the big storm comes out of our house. You know what the big storm is? My husband. My husband, Tom, walks out every day to see if those birds have hatched, if the birds are big or small. This is actually last year when they were just a little bit bigger. He is their storm. Those parents, those martins, they just swoop him and they try to like buzz his head and they squawk. I've never heard birds so loud. He is their storm. So that they're reacting in a way that is actually quite interesting. But my husband said when you're out getting the mail and they are dive bombing your head, it isn't so interesting. And every year he says, I want to take down that nest. Well, actually last year he did take down that nest. And guess what? They came back. And this year they built it, like we have this light fixture, they built it all the way up, almost to the ceiling of our porch. So here we have the nest again. Here we have those martins dive bombing Tom's head again. You know, but he's the one who always goes out there. He's their storm. So we have storms too. We have storms. They're all different. If each and every one of us right now talked about our storms, talked about our fears, talked about our difficulties, we would each have a story, and we would each maybe share how we reacted. And sometimes we do react paralyzed and terrified. We react shrieking, or we react crying, or we react in many different ways. But the storm, even though it's here with us, sometimes, you know, we learn that we have to live with it. Even Tom, the big storm for those martin birds on our porch, often he will go over and he will just sit on our chair that's on our porch, and he will sit there calmly, and eventually those martins calm down. The parent birds go, and he says they must be feeding them little seeds, or I don't know what martins eat, but I'm kind of interested in those birds. I might find out if they're eating worms or seeds. But he can actually then sit there and just watch them being fed, and they're chirping, and they're living their normal life. So how do we do that if we have a storm and the storm's with us, but maybe it's a little less heavy today? It has subsided. How do we get through that storm? Well, this story gives us a few ideas, this gospel story. First of all, we have Jesus with us. When we are people of faith, we have Jesus with us, and Jesus can help us through the storm. We know in this Bible, the storms aren't going to go away, and we all are going to have them. Every reading today talked about difficulties, bad times, hard times in people's lives. We all have the storms. Yet, when we are people of faith, we have Jesus with us. Our God is not asleep. We can go to God and ask for help. Now, in this story, they said, "Do you care about us? Do you know that we're perishing?" That's what the disciples said. Well, we are people of faith. We know that we have a God who cares about us, a God who loves us, a God who forgives us, even when we react poorly or do things that we wish we hadn't done. We know that we have a God who loves us because God did send Jesus here to us. That's how we have all these stories. We have a Jesus who healed, who taught, who suffered with us, suffered on the cross. We know he even wept in the story of Lazarus. So we know our God is not asleep. Our God is with us in our presence. In our presence even here in this place today. In this house of God, he is present at the altar when we come forward for communion. We are in his presence. So we have Jesus with us. We can go to Jesus and instead of saying, "Don't you care for us? Don't you love us?" God has already proved his love through Jesus. So we go and we say, "Dear Lord, help us. Guide us, give us strength, give us comfort, give us wisdom." We go and we ask for help. We are all helped in many different ways. Each of us have had faith experiences that have been hard. And each of us, I'm sure, have had faith experiences where down the road, maybe not quite at that moment when the storm is present, but down the road, we can see how God's presence was in our lives and how God helped calm the storm within us. God has helped us react after a while, maybe not initially, with faith, with hope, with loving kindness. That's what happens when you are people of faith. And sometimes the more experiences you have that are difficult, the more your faith grows. I don't know what it is that has caused you to grow closer to God, but often in my life it has been really difficult times. And I've learned that even though they're difficult, that I can hold on to God and God's promises to get me through. And I hope you can hold on to God and God's promises to get you through. So that when you react to things that initially may be a reaction of fear, that eventually Jesus stills that storm within you and helps you to react with faith and to be calm. And you know, it's so important. It's not only important for us, but it's important for the people that we are with. It's important for our children who need our help. It's important for our family members. It's important for our neighbors. It's important for our coworkers. It's important that they see us having faith, having hope, having prayer, even during those tough times. Because remember, that tough times are always going to be here. But remember, God is always with you, and God can help you get through. May the peace of the Lord, which passes all understanding, be with you. Amen.